Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. As promised, I intend to talk to you now about how to create a new life for yourself, for our own selves. Would you really believe me if I said that the power to begin a new life, knowing everything for yourself, lies within your own brain and your own mind? Your brain is a very delicate tool, and your mind with it have been proven the reality so far. However, only a few people have utilized this aspect of their minds till now. That's a fact. And then comes the time when these abilities must be somewhat shown to us all. All these wondrous gifts of life within that organ that absorbs these words uttered at this very moment. Frankly, the human brain has made man utterly different from other creatures. Greeks in ancient times could not find a word to describe it. Man had certainly advanced through the centuries on his developmental path, and many more generations have done the same. Ancient Greeks are credited with having had a word for everything, but called the brain, which utilizes the mind, and which the brain as the thing in the head. In fact, I believe that this organ was completely ignored by the olden Greeks, as well as the other nations, as they put all importance of life to the solar plexus in those days, as they believed that all the rhythmic actions of that area was closely related with what went on in that part of the body. This apparently was the center of the mind. It took nearly 2,000 years or more for the brain and mind to come to the surface from the depths of the darkness related to man's ignorance of his own self. When the ancient anatomists started observing and studying the brain, thinkers of the times had to move their attention from diaphragm to the head. Shakespeare has called it that which some suppose the soul's frail dwelling house. But the ancient anatomist could do nothing more than weigh the brain's weight, which was about 50 ounces in men and a woman's 45 ounces, which can be more or less. Until the later part of the 19th century, the study was breaking over the worldwide information in this regard. When in the battlefields, way back in 1800s, some members of fighting armies trying to test the effects of electrical current on the exposed brains of certain casualties. I know how it sounds, but... And so the first medical experiment started, leading to the discovery of what brain really was. There are so many stories about certain treatments of people by other humans, but I will leave it on the side for the moment. How about if we simply considered that humans have two brains? And we will come to that in a while. Now, dinosaurs used to have just one small brain in the head, and the second one at the base of the spine, which was to control their huge body functions. But in humans, brains are put together, the second being the development of the first. As a human being had grown, he became more emotional and learned to reason and think. And so he had no choice but develop a new section of his brain. And that has made him rise above the other species on Earth. Walter M. Germain, in one of his books, writes about the human brain being a wonderfully enchanted loom which helps him spin his imagination, and this has given him the ability to reason. Let us put it this way. Without it, man could have progressed no further than his simian relatives. Human imagination was the product of his new brain as an addition, which enabled him to think before doing anything else. If a man has done something wrong, well, he did not actually commit any ill. You see, he can discard that before making the error and use his brain and his imagination to try another solution to the problem. An animal, if at all, is able to think, perhaps would say, I sense, therefore I am. This thought makes it the master of his surroundings. But when man thinks, I know, therefore I am, that actually means that man knows because he has a brain to use. Because he's not dependent on his senses only. Because man is able to observe, and as we all experience, he has the reason. And the result is knowledge and understanding. Like the animals surrounding him, he has an original brain and also an emotional brain. And the main difference is that his new thinking and reasoning guides his actions. As it is written before, basal ganglia makes up the older forebrain. The cerebral cortex and the middle portion make the newer forebrain. In the middle section of the basal ganglia is found the thalamus, and that is what controls the involuntary functions of the body through the sympathetic nervous system. The cerebral cortex controls the voluntary actions of the body by means of the frontal lobes and the motor or cerebrospinal nervous system. This is, of course, called thinking, and is the one which involves both sections of the brain and both sets of nervous systems. And thinking processes of man is also divided into two parts. You are certainly knowledgeable of the conscious thought. Now, this is what you use every day of your life. This is the thinking you are doing right now. However, it is purely the surface-bound thought, and we can consider it being the basic thought. But, and it is a big but, you have a power that is easy to use in your thinking. And it is one which only a few people know about, and a few only even care to develop it further. And that is the thought of superconscious level. Superconscious thinking is the key to the development of the great gift of your brain. Within the superconscious mind lie powers that will be unfolded for you as you continue studying this aspect of your being. These are the types of qualities which require no special education to be developed. They also require no special keys to use. They indeed require no special payment for the profits you will reap. You will reap, I should say. The superconscious mind is a silent companion in achieving the highest, and up to now only dreamt of success in life. The average human being on the street may have a little concept of the higher powers that lie beyond the level of the brain's consciousness. By studying and discovery, by the use of this potential correctly, you can place at your disposal an abundance of energy you may have little realized existed in your own self. You can indeed give yourself great new mental powers, the real purpose of that wonderful gift you can bring about for yourself, a total new concept of living, a wonderful way of happier and longer life. However, it seems that many do not use their superconscious. It's a very fair statement to make. All our conscious thoughts and actions are created by the combined reactions of the dual mental operators and double nervous system to those things that influence the senses. Meaning, you react to what you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. But, as we said before, just the same as what happens to an animal, remember its senses and bases its thinking on the sensations. But we have the power of discrimination and judgment. This constitutes our thinking to the point of knowing, and knowing to the point of understanding. In man, the responses to sensory perception are channeled to the thalamus. That is the principal source of human feelings and emotions. The patterns and the habits of so-called emotional thinking are channeled in this area of the brain. It's called as emotional thinking. Also in this area of the brain by both the superconscious and the collective unconscious. The function of the thalamus is to act as a bridge between what takes place inside and outside of us, so that we are able to register like or dislike upon having one of our five senses reacting to a stimulus. At this instinctive wish level of the consciousness, the natural response of our emotional thinking is to seek pleasure and security and avoid pain or insecurity. These who think and live wisely, the reactions of the sensory perception of outside stimuli first pass through the thalamus, and they are broadcast through the cortex, where feeling impulses are modified, analyzed in the light of reason. The conscious thoughts are then sent once again to the thalamus, where they are broadcast once more into physical action. Sometimes one's emotional thinking is dominated by negative attitudes. These can be offshoots of man's primitive impulses of greed, fear, and anger. If these negative feelings dominate the thinking, it becomes very, very difficult and at times impossible for the powerful emotional impulses to be adequately controlled by one's ability to reason. This way, he is deprived of one of the great powers of the great gift. How does negative thinking cause malfunctioning of the automatic nervous system and produces psychosomatic illness? Will be discussed later. We will also look into how positive attitudes are felt and are responsible for creating good health and peace of mind. This can only be established or accomplished by the harmonious functioning of the human organism. Along the way, we will see how meditation or prayer can create what are commonly called miracles of faith healing through the simple means of extreme acceleration of the processes of organic repair. One of the examples of the everyday use of the superconscious is in your judgment of people and things. You may be inclined to make snap judgments, as many do. More often than not, these judgments are seemingly correct. What is the basis of this perception within you, would you say? What is your response? Are you consciously so perceptive? Obviously not. If questioned, or if you seek to determine for yourself what you based your opinion on, you seldom can say, "Oh, I just felt it. That's all," is a very common answer to such a question. What does in the system of judgment, however, is the superconscious level of the mind? Indeed, you react consciously to a person upon meeting him or her. Similarly, you react to a situation. These reactions are filed in the brain from its deepest depths. The pattern of opinion is formed based on these conscious reactions. This is a pattern which is flushed to the conscious mind, and you have formed an opinion. Only a few people have suspect that superconscious is the storehouse from which they draw these judgments. It has been the development of our so-called cultural reasoning, as Frederick Pierce points out, that is hidden from us. The fact we do use the superconscious in our thinking. The quicker you realize that you can probe beyond the boundaries of the conscious and permit yourself to do so, the sooner will you be starting to use fully the power that you have hidden within your own self. Biologists pointed out that while reason, the power to think, consciously that is, has been responsible for man's attainment of mastery over his so-called destiny, then he is primarily not a rational being. Man indeed relies on reason only where its usefulness is forcibly and immediately brought home to him. The rest of the time he relies on what is termed instinct. That is, he really depends for his reactions upon what his innate self knows. What the superconscious has learned over the countless years of man's advancement and development determines the deriving power that enables him to do what he does, whether good or not so good. Man's innate nature is the end product of countless years of collective environmental experience. This experience is a greater part of man's heredity as his biological constitution. As far as one can see, and using the processes, all the superconscious, man is using the oldest part of his brain from the point of view of utilizing. The thalamus was the dominant part of the brain in the species for many unknown generations before humans were obliged to reason to enable themselves to exist and advance. During the many centuries of uncivilized existence in which man's principal business was to keep alive amid the dangers lurking all around him, the thalamus acquired all the feeling, guidance of wild animals. In other words, the thalamus acquired the traits of animal instincts, or just plain instinct. Daily involvement and competition with other humans and animals in a continual struggle for existence or survival was responsible for the development of the instinct of survival in humans' self-presentation or preservation, and indeed, sex. The things the early man needed and desired, he took whatever it was. This involved somehow the mortal combat. Primitive life made man an instinctively predatory creature with strong human impulses to satisfy the inherent desires and appetite of his primitive nature by fair means or foul. When primitive instincts of the self and also sex cause negative emotions such as fear, lust, anger, and others to dominate the reasoning mind, these superconscious attitudes of feeling motivate the human conduct as misbehavior. The famed neurologist Judson Herrick called thalamic dominance is a state of mental disorder in which one's feelings usurp one's sense of reason. Humans' psychosomatic ills, which we will discuss a little later, culminating some form of degenerative disease, usually are the end product of thalamic dominance, the cause of negative emotional thinking. But that is only one side of the story. Biologists see the picture of the perspective of man's baser nature. However, they overlook the primary reason why man's early ancestors gradually learn to walk on 2 feet when they descend from the trees. In this, you want to see the guiding hand of a great creative force, the evolution of spirituality. The potential good in man's nature is vastly greater than most people suspect. There has been plenty of evidence of unsuspected power and wisdom. Perhaps the life of Jesus Christ is one of the best examples. But because of man's basic incredulity, unusual manifestation, such as intuition, and the extraordinary ability to be able to influence cures in oneself or others have generally been attributed to the power of soul or supernatural sources. Yet, the answer we come up with is an obvious one. Man's evolution is a threefold one, as well as a physical and growth. There is also a spiritual growth. The spirit manifests itself through man's deeper consciousness, his superconscious, the power of the great gift. There are countless cases that bear out to the power of the superconscious. The superconscious mind does possess ample powers to bring renewed health, indeed longer life, greater happiness, and more. We have already spoken that the interaction of thalamic feeling, attitudes, and reasoning conclusions of the cortex produces the finished product or finished thoughts, words, and eventually actions. The interaction of the dual mentality can produce three conditions: normal, abnormal, and extra-normal. In normal state, the human functions harmoniously and individual enjoys peace of mind, and in this state of good health, in the state of well-being, the master of one's own destiny is achieved by the use of reason. The abnormal state disrupts harmonious functioning of the human organism and causes imbalance of the body's mechanism. This state usually robs one of peace of mind and causes ill health, and we shall be able to prove it later. The extra-normal state is produced by synchronous interaction of positive feeling, attitudes, and reason, reactions of the cortex. This is a state of mental perfection. It is the individual who has the benefit of all the reasoning powers of his conscious mind. It is combined with the emotional force and a perfect memory of the superconscious mind, added to the marvelously logical arrangement of its, shall we say, psychic resources. In short, all the elements of intellectual power are in a state of intense and harmonious activity during the extra-normal state of the mind. In fact, it is in the state of mind which produces a real genius. It is this state of mind in which the inventiveness of Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Guglielmo Marconi, George Westinghouse, Albert Einstein, and Charles Kettering blossomed. It is the state of mind which has delivered the insight and know-how for almost every great achievement in science and industry and the arts. It is into this area of thinking that we are going to delve, because by correctly using this potential, we can gain the benefits of health, wealth, and happiness without striving. These benefits are reachable without having to travel laborious routes. They are yours by simply recognizing the superconscious level of the mind and permitting it to function under the proper conditions. When, through the practice of self-discipline and self-control, you have attained the state of self-mastery, you will then enjoy the benefits of your intellectual and spiritual heritage. The biological effects of your physical evolution, that is your animal nature, having uprooted by sane thinking and wise living, you will reflect in your thoughts and actions the true way of life. That takes exemplified by the infinite mind. Keeping in tune with the infinite will lead you to living a life that is useful, purposeful, and rewarding. The superconscious is a veritable genie of the brain that can be a good servant or a bad one. Superconscious is wise and powerful beyond all the comprehension of the human. It is for this reason that people often refer to this hidden power of the great gift as the soul power. Call it whatever you will. It is regardless of what you call it. Wisdom and power, far beyond the reason of man to comprehend fully, except the light of divine heritage, and as an instrument through which the intelligence of the infinite operates. The purpose of the provider of the knowledge is to provide you, us all, with sufficient knowledge of the basic mechanism of the great power of the wonderful gift, so that we all can use to your superconscious, our superconscious, as a good servant instead of a bad one. To this end, it is essential to establish a working hypothesis. Without such a hypothesis, you cannot begin an exact study of the superconscious. In the field of psychological investigation, and more especially in a field of parapsychology, as satisfactory scientific working hypothesis has not yet been fully formulated, which embraces all the psychological phenomena known to mankind these many centuries. It was for this reason that the late Dr. Alexis Carrel, famed for 33 years of brilliant biological research at the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, commented, "The importance of intuition in mental life requires an investigation of metaphysic phenomena and the application of scientific method to the study of telepathy and clairvoyance." For our working hypotheses, then, we can use the findings of the late scientist Dr. Thomson J. Hudson, as he outlined it in his book as a scientific demonstration of the future life. Dr. Hudson compiled a great deal of data concerning the mind and its superconscious aspects. In Dr. Hudson's time, however, it was believed that man's apparent dual nature was that of body and soul, and he naturally attributed the powers of the superconscious to the soul. It is only the advances of psychiatry and the field of medicine which have shown us the truth, that the hidden power of man emanates from his mind, not his soul. While psychiatry has, however, drawn its conclusions from the studies of abnormal psychology, thus presenting the negative side of human nature, the theory, according to Walter M. Germain, is built on human nature's positive side. The positive or constructive side is based on the contention that man is essentially good due to the godliness, his spiritual evolution as manifested, and positive emotional thinking. The conclusion of our working hypothesis concerning the extraordinary powers of the superconscious are based on three things. First, the information pertaining to mental phenomena as disclosed by the science of hypnosis. Secondly, usage of the results of Dr. Carrel's study of the so-called miracles of faith healing. Finally, the conclusions are based on Walter M. Germain's personal experiences in telepathy, clairvoyance, and clairaudience. These various experiences can be definitely classified in the category of the parapsychological science of extrasensory perception, so designed by Professor J.B. Ryan of Duke University. The 7 propositions of the working hypotheses upon which the study of the superconscious is to be based are: 1. The superconscious is constantly amenable to control by the power of suggestion. 2. Superconscious is incapable of independent reasoning by the processes of induction. 3. The power of the superconscious reason deductively from given premises to correct conclusions is practically perfect. 4. Superconscious is endowed with a perfect memory. 5. The superconscious has absolute control of the functions and conditions of the body. 6. Superconscious has the power to communicate by means other than the recognized channels of the 5 senses. The superconscious is capable of intuition and perception of the laws of nature. These 7 propositions, as we spoke about before, will be embellished upon and discussed fully later. How you can recognize this power of the mind and how they can be put to use for your advantage will also be studied. By understanding and appreciating these 7 points of this working hypothesis, you too can set about creating a new life for yourself. These are the 7 major effects that scientists have discovered that you will learn in the following programs that we will be talking about. These are the 7 planks of the platform that forms the basis of the teachings you are to absorb in the ensuing programs. So we hope. These are part of the mind that have been recognized. They are powers that you can and will recognize. The powers that you will quickly put to use for your own advantage, and we will all do the same. These are the propositions that you will learn to understand. These are means by which you are going to set about now to create a new life for yourself. We shall meet again by the next episode. Until then, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.